Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Black Sabbath, how we became fans, if we think Ozzy's solo career is better than Sabbath, and the album Technical Ecstasy. Is this an often overlooked classic, or was this a misstep for the band? We give our opinion, and we look forward to hearing yours. Alrighty, lots to cover in this episode. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it, so let's jump in and let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today, I'm excited to have back with me my bloody Vincent LaRussa, as well as Billy Davis, back for what is this, the third or fourth time, Bill?
Um, Somewhere around there.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think we're
two.
losing counts, right?
Yeah, I think we did the Paul Stanley songs, and then uh, yeah, there was one more. I think I can't remember
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
you had him on when we had the do we do the whole
We did a
band
Kiss
thing?
Unmasked. We did that with the full band, right, where we spoke
Yeah.
about Kiss cover
Right,
bands.
that was it.
Right?
That
Of
was
course,
it.
Yes,
anybody
yes.
who's watching maybe for the first time and doesn't know, Billy is a part of the, and so is Vincent, but they're both part of the Kiss cover band, Kiss Unmasked. And then, Billy, you also do a Slayer tribute band as well, right? Show No Mercy.
Yes, correct.
And
Yep.
I was excited to learn before this that you used to be in a Star Wars type cover band. So,
It's Aerosmith, the Star
Aeros,
Wars parody band.
love it. Love it. I'm going to be Googling that one or YouTubing that one tonight for sure. But today, what we wanted to do is get together. Well, I've had some guests on the show to talk about different albums that maybe Vincent and I weren't as familiar as maybe our guests were, and some of the people who watch this show. Clearly, I'm a Sabbath fan, love Sabbath. They might be close to one of my top 10 bands of all time, but the album you chose is not one that I'm overly familiar with. So I'd love that you did that. But before we even talk about the album, for you, Billy, a Black Sabbath fan, when did you become a Sabbath fan?
Um, Actually, it's sometime in the late 70s, a friend of mine had access to his brother's album collection, and the brother had moved away and got married, moved out of state. So he started trading me the albums for different things. Like it might have been bubblegum cards or a couple of slices of pizza, and he'd give me an album, and I got all these rock albums. One of them was Paranoid, and I really liked it. It wasn't as much my favorite as Kiss was, but
Mhm.
I still liked it. And then over the years, I started collecting the Black Sabbath albums,
Nice.
and didn't see them on tour until they did the reunion. When was that? In when they did the
20,
Ozfest,
okay,
and they
yes, like
started.
2010-ish or something like
Yeah,
that, give or take a
right.
few years. All right, yeah, so you saw them actually a few years. I didn't see them until the 13 album for the first time in concert.
But I will say, and this is really
Yeah.
interesting, is that in 1978, I went I was only 15, went to Ticketron to pick up concert tickets, and I was going for the Alive 2 tour
Hmm.
at Madison Square Garden, and I saw on the board Black Sabbath with Van Halen at Madison Square Garden. I was like, oh, I'd love to go to that. But
Mm-hmm.
do I give up the money that I have that I came to go get the Live 2 tickets? No, I went to a Live 2. I'm
Right.
glad I did, but I
Uh,
missed a great show. That would have been great to
Yeah,
see.
that would have been great to see both those bands at that time. I'm surprised because I remember you showing me once some photos of like a book that you have with the list of concerts. And the list was like 20 million concerts that you've been to. So I was
Yeah.
going to gamble that you actually saw Sabbath in the 70s, but I guess none of the three
Wow.
of us did.
Nope. Only
Really?
saw a few concerts in the 70s. I was still young enough that
Right.
going from Queens into the city was like a big deal in the
Sure.
teens, so I didn't go to as many.
Sure. Now, Vin, do you remember when you first became aware of Black Sabbath and became a Black Sabbath fan?
I know when I first became aware, when I was younger, my dad had a compilation record from Warner Brothers. I still have it, and it was actually called Heavy Metal. And ironically, some of the songs are in there. I don't think are really considered, heavy metal, like Dr. John, Right Place. I went to right place, but I've been there in the wrong time. Whatever the hell that song is,
Okay.
and some other songs. Like Touch Me by the Doors. That's not a heavy metal song.
Right.
But the second song on the album was Iron Man. That's the first time I remember, so if he got in 74, I was probably 4 years old, 5 years old. I remember
Wow.
hearing Iron Man. So that's my first, like, I guess, introduction to Black Sabbath. And just always, that how could you that the intro with the kick drum and you're like, what the hell's about to happen now? And
Right.
then that man, you're like, oh man, then that voice, I am Iron Man, and just thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Even or that young. But then, as I've spoken to before, once I started on the heavy metal trail, in the early 80s is when I really started to be aware, the Paranoid, the first album, and then it used to be a ritual that right before a gig, when I was gigging when I was 18, 19, I'd play Zero to Hero before I'd leave a gig because I thought it was just the darkest, most, the dirtiest, grungiest, whatever. Like it's like, yeah, the devil definitely wrote this song, and I think he's singing. It became like a tradition that whole, uh, that whole intro to that song, and just
Mhm.
get into the chorus. That would get me all pumped up to go to the gig. So
Interesting. Yes. Yeah. I remember you
yeah,
telling me that once before. Yeah. It's
yeah,
funny. I think I knew in the 70s, I knew the song Paranoid, but that was it. That was the extent of my Black Sabbath knowledge.
mm,
And, like Billy was talking about going to see Kiss in the 70s, Kiss was my band and really my only band in the 70s. And then a friend of mine turned me on to Ozzy Osbourne solo. And that's actually my first introduction to Ozzy, really knowing who Ozzy was. And I had a cassette of the first two Ozzy solo albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. And I loved it. And I was like, wow, all right, I got to get some more of his back catalog now. I got to get into Ozzy. So what did I do? I said, all right, let me go out and buy a Sabbath album. And what was the first Sabbath album I bought? Mob Rules. Not Ozzy, but
mm,
I didn't know that at the time, right? So I put it on and I'm like, this doesn't sound like Ozzy Osbourne singing. And I look at the crowd, I'm like, oh, Ronnie James Dio. But I absolutely love, love, love that album to this day. It's one of my favorite Sabbath albums. From there, I got, I think it was the Never Say Die concert video,
mm.
not even the
Yeah, I remember
album.
borrowing that from you. I remember
Yeah,
borrowing that from you.
yeah,
Hmm.
I had the concert video, but it was a copy of it. And I seem to remember a couple of songs missing, which is ironic because when we talk about Technical Ecstasy, I'll mention that. But there's a couple of songs, but that was really my introduction to Black Sabbath music. From there, I purchased the greatest hits one. What was that? We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll. I
Right.
bought that, which Billy, that came out, I think, in 76, right before Technical Ecstasy. So for me, it was weird. I kind of bookmarked this Technical Ecstasy album. I liked the Ozzy solo stuff. I liked the Sabbath stuff that came after it. And I have all the Sabbath albums that came before it. And I have the Never Say Die album, and I knew that video, but I never knew really the Technical Ecstasy album. So when you said you choosing this, I'm like, wow, you went right into that little tiny hole in my life where I didn't know this one Sabbath album. I knew a couple of the songs, but it was just, I was so excited that you chose it because I'm like, for some reason, and I'll explain probably why while we do our conversation, I've avoided this album for so many years, in part because I absolutely despise this album cover. I think it's one of the worst album covers I've ever seen in my life. But also, when we talk about some of the songs, I'll tell you another reason I avoided the album at first as well. But I'm so excited you chose this, Billy. So, what made you decide to choose Technical Ecstasy? Because there's so many other more quote unquote obvious choices,
Right. Well, yeah, the first six albums, everybody, all the Black Sabbath fans and anybody else says they are really the prime era of Sabbath. In fact, Henry Rollins recently said that there's only two things you can trust in this world, yourself and the first six Sabbath albums.
I love
So
it.
They did 8 with Ozzy. So the seventh was Technical Ecstasy,
Hmm.
and the eighth was Never Say Die, was them as they were really finishing up the Ozzy
Sure.
period. But this was an album that it came out in 76. 76 was kind of a favorite year of mine. Amazing albums. Uh, Destroyer, Rocks, the Boston album, Night at the Opera, 2112 by Rush.
Yep.
So it's got a certain sound to it and a feel of the period. So yeah, I always kind of liked the album, but always heard people kind of trash it. And then you'd say, well, what do you not like about it? And they wouldn't really be able to give specifics or even name many songs. So I think
Hmm.
really it was a time when people were just giving up on Sabbath and they never even gave this album a chance. And even though there was turmoil in the band, it was experimental in what they did do. They were known for doing this C sharp down tuning to get the very doomy sound. They didn't do this on the album. They just
Hmm.
played an E standard tuning. So it gave it a certain uh, feel of a little bit more friendly for listeners, and being experimental. I mean, I even compare it to look at Kiss to Destroyer in the same year. They were
True.
going in a different direction, trying to just change things and do something different with their sound. So yeah, I always wanted. I even like the first six Sabbath albums more than Technical Ecstasy, but I
Okay.
do believe that this never got its just due of being at least the next best album, but people
Right.
just don't like it. So especially here, you guys who haven't really listened to this much, I'm really curious with your repeated listenings to see, you know, have you caught on to any of it? Do you think any of it is actually better than what people have said about it?
Absolutely. And I'll certainly be giving my opinions for and against as we go along. One or two other quick questions before we jump into the album. For yourself, Billy, as a fan, if you had to choose Sabbath or Ozzy solo, what do you choose?
That could be a whole other podcast. I
That
tell you,
could.
here's where I don't want to offend is I
Uh-huh.
was never an Ozzy solo fan.
There's
In
nothing wrong
fact,
with an opinion.
when Ozzy left Sabbath, I was pretty much like, okay, that's it. That's it for me. I can't do Sabbath without Ozzy, and I was mad at Ozzy for leaving Sabbath.
Hmm.
It's only years later now that I've come to appreciate those albums, but
Hmm.
I was totally against Ozzy, his Ozzy period.
Right. Okay.
So,
Interesting.
but I respect what he did, and it's now I see it's incredible, and I kind of missed out.
Right. Well, but there's nothing wrong with having an opinion, right? And Vin, what about yourself? Ozzy solo or Black Sabbath? Which one would you choose? And I know this is a tough question. And like Billy said, we
You
could do a whole
know,
podcast on this on this
I
topic.
you know, first of all, it's a little unfair because Black Sabbath also encompasses with Ronnie James Dio.
Sure.
You know,
And plenty of other singers after that, but
and well, yeah, but most prominently, that's what I
yes,
meant. You know, I
of
don't
course.
want
I knew what you
to
meant.
say anything. Yeah, but Black Sabbath's the original.
Mm.
Without there being an Iron Man and a Paranoid and War Pigs and NIB. I mean, everything after that, what Ozzy did, and in a way, I feel came from where he was. Not to say that Randy Rhoads and Tony Iommi are the same guitar players. Clearly, they're
No,
not.
they're not.
But I'd have to go with the original. It's
Okay.
like Coke. Remember when New Coke? Although
Yeah.
Ozzy, I don't want to compare Ozzy to New Coke because that was just like nobody wanted it. But I'm going with the original Coke Black Sabbath Classic. Remember when
Black
they did
Sabbath
that? They
classic.
went
That's it.
Coke Classic. They had to like rebrand it because everyone was pissed off.
And then
Yeah,
they had to go back because everybody was so up in
That's right.
arms
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
That's right.
Imagine that over a soft drink.
Over a soft drink, exactly. It's funny.
Yeah.
I think for me, I tend to lean a little more towards Ozzy solo because for me, that's where my fandom started. But if I'm looking at the full body of work, I probably lean Sabbath. So talk about playing it both ways with my answer, right? So
You
like
know
you
what?
said, Bill, those first six
You,
albums, Sabbath,
you,
that's tough to top.
you know what it is too for me. Like Sabbath to me, the four of them. Tony Iommi and Bill Ward and Geezer Butler. Just that lineup. It's just Ozzy had all these different guys, and who obviously
Mhm.
Randy Rhoads and Brad Gillis for a little bit, and then Jakey Lee, who I love, and there was all these different all great players, great drummers, Tommy Aldridge, but that four core, those guys, especially I love Geezer Butler, and I think Bill Ward is a highly underrated drummer. I mean, I don't know why people don't think. A lot of people talk about, and he's another guy who I think is very underrated, as Ian Pace from Deep Purple. I mean, if you really listen to the body of work and listen to his playing, I mean, I think these are two guys that it's like a sin that they don't get the kind of recognition. I know everybody talks about Bonham, and for good reason.
Right.
But these guys were along in the same era, and I think they should be mentioned, just as much as a guy like Bonham, because they don't sound like Bonham. Bonham doesn't sound like them.
You
It
know
just
what?
so happened that Led Zeppelin is Led Zeppelin, and they were, arguably the biggest band of all those.
Right.
When you
Absolutely.
mentioned Bill Ward, it's really interesting because just like Peter Criss is known for being a swing drummer, he had
Yeah.
that kind of jazzy thing. Uh, recently, I'm reading Geezer Butler's book, and he said that Bill Ward was a swing drummer. He added
Mm-hmm.
swing to kind of almost heavy metal, and he said that he's never heard anybody else that can sound like Bill Ward.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's
yeah,
true.
they were
Just
unique musicians.
listen just in War Pigs, his fills in between. You get like his fills there is kind of what Billy's saying, and in the sense, if you listen to Deep Purple, Pace is a little similar to him. I would say it's a kind of, I think, I don't know what their influences were, but it sounds like it came almost from the same body of work.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing
Of
about
course. Yes.
when you were comparing Ozzy to Black Sabbath? Um, what's interesting is they're distinctly different bands because Ozzy, when he was in Sabbath, very rarely wrote any lyrics, didn't write any songs. It was really just Ozzy's voice on that music. And then when he went to the solo career, I guess that maybe he led a little bit more of that style, right? I mean, he did start writing lyrics, even though let's say in the first incarnation, Randy Rhoads wrote the music.
Right.
So I almost can't compare the two because it's not like Ozzy brought his songwriting to the solo band.
Right. Right.
So distinctly different. And also let's also say that Sabbath influenced heavy bands, let's say in the 80s of, if you want to say Metallica, the
Absolutely.
Doom, and uh, even some of the grunge bands, like even Soundgarden says that Kim Thayil from Soundgarden says that his riffs are all right out of Tony Iommi's type of style.
Yep.
But then Ozzy, you look at what Ozzy did, and he influenced more of his solo, influenced more of the um, hair metal bands, let's say, even though they were kind of happening around the same time, but that's almost two separate genres, really, that Ozzy went from extreme heavy music to, metal, commercially accessible metal with, so just
Absolutely.
something
No.
interesting to think
I
about.
no, I agree. And I know as a solo artist, Bob Daisley was doing a lot of the lyric writing also. But the reason I brought up that comparison is because for me, we'll start talking about Techno Ecstasy. There were times that I'm listening to this album, even though I know from what I've read now that Tony Iommi was kind of off on his own doing a lot of this album, but for my ears, it sounded more closer to Ozzy solo material than Sabbath. And you were just explaining, Billy, how they would down tune the guitars for their first six albums, and they didn't for this. And for my novice non-guitar playing, knowledge, that's
Right.
probably why it sounded more like a Ozzy solo album. Not to mention some of the layered in keyboards and stuff like that. It gave me a little bit more of that Ozzy solo vibe, even though I know it's not. It's like Vinny said, and like you said, it is not an Ozzy solo album in any shape, matter. If anything, it's closer to Tony Iommi's solo album. But it's one of the reasons I asked that question because I kept feeling like, ooh, I feel like I'm listening more like to an Ozzy album with this
Mm,
because it kind of surprised me a little bit. I mean, I always knew this was different, but the fact that none of the songs really were down tuned and it didn't have that, like, you'd never hear the song Black Sabbath on this album, right? There's no
right.
way that song fits on this album at all. And
Yeah.
it's definitely a different sounding album, at least for my ears.
Right. Yep.
Do
Fair
we
to
want
say.
to jump in and talk about the songs? And so what I said, when we do this, couple of things. First off, we're going to rate the songs on a scale of 0 to 10, just in case anybody hasn't watched this before. We always say 5 is average. Not every song in the catalog in the world could be a 10. Not every song is a Stairway to Heaven type of song, right? 7 and above is your upper echelon songs. 5 is average. Anything less than 5 is below average, right? So that's the rating scales we use. That's what we're going to be talking about when we do this. I told Billy, since he's the guest and he's the one that knew this album more than Vinny and I, he's always going to go last to kind of set us in our place and tell us where we're right or wrong. And at the end of the day, it's all opinions. But Billy, I'm going to let you go last as we go through this so you can kind of weigh in on maybe some different opinions, maybe not. Vinny and I have not spoke other than in the last week. Vinny must have asked me 10 times. So did you listen? So did you listen? And I was on vacation. I couldn't. And then today, he's like, yeah, I finally got like 12 listens in over the last week. He's like, oh, wow, that's a lot. I was like, yeah, I'm not commenting why, good, bad, or indifferent. But I'm always interested to see where we are going to land on this.
And what did I ask you?
I don't remember. What did you ask me? Because you asked me.
I said, what was your throw level? I said, what's your throw level?
Yes, you said, what's your throw level? And I said, I'm just throwed to talk with Billy. This is exactly how I responded. And you said, we're always throwed to talk to Billy.
Yeah.
All righty. Let's jump in. Technical Ecstasy. Vin, I'm going to let you go first. The first song, Backstreet Kids. What are you thinking?
Well, okay, so let me just preface with a couple things. You know how I like to do the setup.
Yes.
Number one, I wish this record had better production. I don't know what happened when they went with the sound of this album, especially the bass. It's very thin. And I love this first song, the bass. It's got like it's got those like little, you know me, as soon as I hear a song, it's either got a bass slap or some sort of slide or, you know, it's all the Gene Simmons, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, I think unfortunately the album suffers a bit from sound quality. And, you know, the ironic thing, and I'm going to get this directly from Wikipedia. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Eagles were recording Hotel California in a studio right next to it.
Yeah.
Or room right next to it, and they said sometimes the sound was so loud, you know, from Sabbath that they had to stop. And then one of the other things that I just you know, again, a sign of the time, they were talking about that. I guess, you know, back then it wasn't like how it is now. Everything is either on the computer or there was flying faders, right? So when another band came in, you know, they would have to reset the console and then set up. And one of the things it says that before we would start recording, we had to scrape all the cocaine out of the mixing board. Geezer divulged. I think they left about a pound of cocaine in the board of the Eagles, which is crazy in a sense because, you know, they recorded and wrote Hotel California, which is arguably the Eagles' best record that they ever put out. But and that album sounds phenomenal. So that's my point of this whole thing. I don't know what the hell happened. Same studio. And, you know, so that was the first thing. I was like, oh, man, as soon as I start listening to it, I'm like, I'm disappointed, you know, just in the sound quality. And then as I started listening to the record, I'm like, oh, boy, I'm in trouble with this one. Because it really, and I don't want to give away where I'm going with this, but I was like, uh-oh, you know, I was like, am I going to like this record, you know? And as we go along, I'll give you my opinion on that. Now that I've said my long-winded, as you asked me for my review of this song, yeah, I like the song a lot. I love the bass. I think it's a great opening track, and I love how they did like what I call like the Beatles end, where it just gets cut off. They kind of did that in "She's So Heavy" on oh God. Senior Moment, Abbey Road, you know, down, and it just ends like, and I always loved that about that. I mean, it's so long, you know, that song, the ending, and you just like waiting for them, and they just cut it off. So I love that approach. I don't know if that was influenced by that, but I give this 6.2.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this song started, and right away I knew, all right, I'm listening to a different Sabbath album here right away. Every time I kept listening to this song, and I know this song came first, but I kept waiting for Ann Wilson to come in and start singing Barracuda for me. It's just I kept hearing that guitar riff, the Barracuda riff, and I know Barracuda came out afterwards, but for me, I've known Barracuda longer than this song. So you know, I like the song. I don't love the lyrics of the song. You know, I'm used to Sabbath singing about dark themes and everything, and the whole nobody will take my rock and roll away from me. Like, I like the chorus, it's good, but lyrically, that's not what I want to hear from Sabbath. Saying that, I like the synths in the song, it didn't bother me. It's a catchy song. I actually went with a 6 on this one. All right, Billy, what do you think?
All right. So in response to what Vincent said about the production,
Yeah.
the album was produced by Tony Iommi, who he didn't want to. He wanted to have a producer in, but money was really getting tight with the record company and everything. They were actually uh, um, having to pay a lot of money in taxes and everything. They were really financially in trouble. So he produced it. So that definitely, I would say that the low end maybe was something that's why you don't get that on the album because Tony Iommi is a guitar player. He layered tons of guitars on the album, and I think the guitars and also he did a great job with Ozzy's vocal because he put a little bit of that doubling sound that Ozzy is known for in his sound. Something to consider, which I didn't go and look at the credits, is maybe they brought in engineers that had worked before because producers typically they're guiding the way things are going to go, but the engineer is the guy who really gets that sound down and sets up how it's to be recorded. But Tony Iommi did participate in the mixing and the mastering too. So again, a guitar player typically will not favor certain other instruments. Uh, and then what you were saying, Mike, about you expect that doom and
Yeah.
gloom from Sabbath. They consciously were going away from that. They and it's also said in Wikipedia and everything that it was a time when punk was coming in and they really thought they were not relevant anymore and that they had to do something different. So again, that's why they went to all E tuning on the album. And Geezer also, who was the lyric writer, who he's the one who was a very well-read guy who uh, researched things and brought out all these really interesting themes of mythology and the occult and things like that. He consciously said, I'm going to go a little lighter and pretty much make like a rock and roll record. So that's what the theme it looks like it was.
Sure.
I really like this song. I think it's a great lead-off song. It reminded me a lot even of Children of the Grave with the
Hmm. Okay.
same type of riff on there. And Backstreet Kids, it seems like it's a little bit more of they were going back to the theme was back to the roots of when they grew up in Birmingham. Uh, so I like it. I think it's a really good lead-in song, and I would have liked to have seen the rest of the record kind of go in this direction.
Hmm.
So I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I agree. It's a good, it's probably the perfect lead-off song for this album. In terms of just the 8 songs that are on the album. It's the perfect lead song for the record. I agree with you there. All right, Vin, you got those ratings, right? All right,
Hmm.
we'll go to the next song then. You Won't Change Me. I'll go first on this. This song starts, and I'm like, that's the flavor. Fuck yeah, man. That's what I like. That's my Sabbath. It instantly started making me think of Electric Funeral. Just like that that riff at the beginning of the song. I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the verse kicks in with a keyboard. I'm like, whoa, what the hell just happened? Yeah, it totally took me by surprise. But I have to say, I freaking love this song. I never had heard this song before. I'll admit that. And this is the one I'm like, oh, I'll listen to that again. Oh, I'll listen to that again. This is the one that goes on to my mixed playlist that I have. This is the one that I say, Billy, thank you for introducing me to this song. I absolutely love this song. I think it was great. The verses, they got a great hook. Everything about the song I just really like. Does it sound like the classic Sabbath that I know at times? Yes, and at times no, but it's a damn good song. I went with an 8 on this one. Go ahead, Vin.
Okay. Yeah. To
Oh wait, hold on. I'm sorry.
echo
I gotta add
your
one thing. Wait, Vin. I gotta cut you off. Holy crap! With the friggin' Tony Iommi solos on this song. How could I forget to say that? Multiple friggin' amazing guitar. To me, maybe some of Tony Iommi's best guitar solos ever. It's just another part of the song I absolutely love. Sorry, I had to say that. I forgot to say it, but I'm like, shame on me for not saying it. So now go ahead, Vin.
well, I don't think I really have to comment after you just basically took everything I was going to say.
Oh, that's
Thanks for
great.
that.
No
No,
problem.
no, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, my in my notes because I usually have notes on each song. Yeah, I said it starts off and it sounds like vintage Sabbath, right? And then and I also commented about the guitar solo on it.
Mhm.
That it's a great guitar solo. I gave this one a 6.5.
Okay, nice. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, I really like this one. Now it's interesting what you say about the solos, how good they are. Ozzy said one of his complaints with the album is he said we would go into the studio and Tony would say, what do you think of this solo? And listen to this. And he said they would sit there and after about 25 takes, uh, they were like bored and they said, we got to get out of here. We don't want to have to sit through listening to all this guitar stuff.
Mhm.
And Geezer commented that usually his first take was the best one anyway, but he
Mm,
really did a lot with guitars on this album. And being that he was producing, he just there was nobody to really stop him. So, which I think is for the good, is that
Mhm.
it's because there's layers of guitars. Just have to listen really hard, and you can hear this harmony guitar playing and everything like that. In fact, even at one point, they had to call the record company and say, you know what, we're running out of money here. Can you please, send us money? And they did.
Mhm.
And one of the jokes that they said was, "We'll send you this money, and now you can go treat yourself to some McDonald's."
mm.
So I guess they figured that they're putting everything into making the album, and
Right. Well,
um, but yeah, I really like this song. Yeah, that doomy riff in the beginning really jumps out at you, and it doesn't come back in the song.
no, no. All
You
I kept
wait.
thinking when I heard that is Electric Funeral. I kept hearing that riff in my head. I know they're probably different, but I kept thinking Electric Funeral, Electric Funeral. Then it never
Yeah,
came back, like you
right,
said.
right. But it is a great song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's um kind of an unusual theme. It's a little bit more of a depressive song,
Hmm.
almost like earlier Sabbath, uh,
Sure.
and a long one too at 6:34.
Yeah.
It's pretty long, and it's something that I think I would have liked to have seen them kind of attempt on tour, but they never did. They only did 3 songs when they did go out on tour, which I'll mention them when they come up.
Hmm.
Um, I'm going to give it a 7,
Nice.
just
Okay.
because I think it's again a song that could have been um, if other songs were like the first two, it would have been a strong album.
Yep. Yep. Well, then that's an interesting segue to the next song, which is nothing like the first two, right? So, in fact, I'll say nothing like any other Sabbath song up to this point. It's all right. Bill Ward on vocal, his first vocal. I know for me, Vin, I told you that there were 2 songs I was aware of before I'd listened to this album. When Billy said he was going to choose this, It's All Right kind of came on my radar about 10 years ago because somewhere along the way somebody said, oh, Bill Ward sang a song on Technical Ecstasy. I was like, he did? I hate to admit, but at that time, 10 years ago, I did not know that. And when I listened to it 10 years ago, I'm like, that's Sabbath. What the hell? And I probably listened to it once or twice again and then never listened to it again. But I'm going to say, I think this is a great friggin' song. The problem that I have with this song, I hate to say it, the problem that I have is that it's a Black Sabbath song. It doesn't sound anything like what Black Sabbath is supposed to sound like, but it's a really well-written song. To me, it almost has like a little of like a Beatles feel. And Vinny could tell me 20 reasons why I'm wrong in saying that, but you
21.
know, 21 reasons. It surprises me. I know it's the lead single of the album. It surprises me that they put it in the 3 spot on the album because it is such a left turn, and Bill Ward's voice obviously is much different. To me, would have been good as like the closing song on the album. And I don't say that because I think it's a throwaway, but it's a little surprising that it's there as the 3. I've thought of this. I wonder what would have happened as the lead single if this became a huge hit for Sabbath. We know, and Billy, you alluded to this earlier, after this album and tour, Ozzy left for a little bit. Then he came back. Then he left. Had this been a huge hit, would they have considered letting Bill sing more songs? And I think he sang another one on the next album also, but would he have maybe done more songs? Hey, let's get rid of Ozzy. We don't need him. let's have Bill be the lead singer of the band. I doubt it, but it's an interesting what if to think of had this song become like a top 5 hit around the world or whatever. Saying that, I really dig this song. I just hate that it's a Black Sabbath song, but I really, really like it. I'm gonna go with a 7.5 on this one. I think it's a real good song. Just not a shouldn't be Black Sabbath. And I say it to anybody. If you don't know Black Sabbath and you put this on, you'd never in a million years guess that you're listening to Black Sabbath ever. So but there you go. I'll take my bias that it shouldn't be a Black Sabbath song out, and I'll say it's a good song, 7.5. Go ahead, Vin.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I like when an artist shows that they're not just, I'm not going to call Black Sabbath a one trick pony by any means, but if you get what I'm trying to say, I like
Yes.
when they could show another side of, their creativity. This whole record I had never heard any songs before, so everything was like totally new to me. And it's kind of like with this particular song, I'll remember exactly where I was in the car when I first heard this in traffic going into Hoboken, saying, "Oh, I used to love working from home 5 days a week." Anyways, and I'm like, "Who the hell is this? This is definitely not Ozzy with like a different voice." I'm like, "Who is singing the song?" And risking danger and mom, don't watch this part of the thing, and looking on Wikipedia to see what the hell is going on. I had to find out. And then to find out that it was Bill Ward, I was like totally shocked. And I may be one of only 3 people who bought Bill Ward's solo album. I think in like '89 he put out a solo album. Uh, so I was totally surprised. Like, and I was shocked on how good it was. The vocal first and foremost. And he goes into this whole falsetto thing. I'm like, who the hell knew Bill Mental Ward could sing like this? They call him Bill Mental Ward. And he's got like this soft voice and it's got this great nylon string guitar solo in it, which you totally don't expect. It's got like these synth strings or whatever the hell is going on. Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this song and was pleasantly surprised. I gave it just slightly under you. I gave it a 7.3.
Nice. Very nice. And you know what? I want to add one thing. You guys are talking about Bill Ward as a drummer. And for me, I sometimes love the most simplest parts of songs. It doesn't have to be all these flashy things, but when the drums come in and he's just like on the snare, I just love like love that part of the song. It's just it's perfect for the song. So, but Bill, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say, Billy, because I'm thinking of you and that Slayer tribute band. I'm thinking of this song, and I'm not sure where you're going to go with your opinion on this. So go ahead, enlighten us.
I have a lot of kind of varied tastes in music. I can even go into like singer-songwriter folk,
Nice.
acoustic
Okay.
guitar and vocal. So I can appreciate stuff like this. And I love this song.
Excellent.
And I think what impressed me the most is when you and I probably never listened as carefully as I did in research for this podcast, but listening to his vocal, I mean, it's really uh not just a guy throwing it out there. He's got a little bit of tremolo on on the tail ends of his voice going out and everything, and he sounds like he's a skilled vocalist.
Yeah.
He did sing before he came into Black Sabbath. He was in a band for a little while and sung. I don't know how much he did, but that's what I read that he did.
Mhm.
What's really interesting also is that Ozzy was completely supportive. Ozzy was a good buddy of Bill Ward. And he was like, definitely go for it. He sings it good, and that's, it should be on the album. But you wonder if Bill Ward was kind of suppressed from doing that, from having a chance to sing, because all these bands, and you hear this all the time, that grow up together when they're teenagers, there's a certain uh, hierarchy where like a guy like Tony Iommi was the bully guy. He was the guy that would beat people up, and they were
Mhm.
all afraid of him, the bandmates. And you often hear that these bands grow up and that same dynamic remains even in their older age. So the fact that Bill Ward was actually able to come out and say, "Hey, I got this song," and he played it for them. And I wonder if he played it on piano. There's piano in the song. So I wonder if I'm not sure if he played the piano unless he just sang it
That's
out.
right.
Um, but it's really interesting that he got that done. And you would expect that there would be a story told where Ozzy didn't come to the studio that day. They were going to record a song and he didn't show up. So Bill
Mhm.
said, hey, I got this song. And they were like, yeah, sure. And you know, but they don't tell that kind of
No.
story, just that it
Yeah.
somehow came out. But at the same time, there was a lot of drugs going on at the time. So even though I've read everybody's books, I've never seen a story that kind of goes further into that.
Hmm.
Yeah, now for the song, it's really interesting that, it could have been just an acoustic song that went through what we hear in the beginning because it launches right into the verse without any kind of instrumental intro. But as some traditional Sabbath things usually have to happen in every song, and that's the solo that's in the middle. It changes tempo and it kind of goes up. The electric guitars come in, which I think is really tastefully done, and it kind of brings you back into the soft side of the song.
Yeah.
So, and then why I think it was third on the album is because I think in the process when they were mastering it and talking about Sequence, the record company wanted it released as a single.
Hmm.
And they were a little bit tentative about that. Like, it's not going to really show what Sabbath really is. But at the same time, wanting to do something different and appeal to different audiences and move on, it made sense. So I think
Yeah.
that's why in the third position it
Probably. Yeah.
works.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I give it a 7.2.
Nice. So we're all right there in that same
Yeah.
spot. That's awesome.
And I think it's important to note that he did write the song. It's the only song that's credited just to Bill alone. So
Hmm.
him
Right.
singing it really, I guess, wasn't that far of a stretch because he
Right.
probably presented it. They realized how good it was and said, you should sing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's a great song. All righty. The fourth song, Gypsy. Go ahead, Vin. I'll let you start this one first.
Yeah, I mean, I like this song. I think it's a little bit above average. It's got a cool drum intro. I like the how the song starts, and then it's got a middle section. There was a couple of songs on this album. Like, what does this remind me of? Like, what band? And this middle section reminds me of like ELO or something like that. It's got like these strings, like this kind of very like I just I'm like, is it an ELO? Was it that foreigner song I heard that had strings? Was that song? Good morning. Da, 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 da. There's like this. I don't know. There was just. It just reminded me of something. Again, it's totally unpredictable. Didn't sound like anything that was like came before or after in Sabbath. I think these songs, you know, from top to bottom, are very well written and very well produced. Not so much engineered. Just it was very thoughtfully written. I just think they didn't just like, all right, we're just gonna wing it and just we're gonna try to do something different and hope for the best. I really think
Hmm.
that they really tried hard on writing these songs. I give the song a 5.5.
Okay. Yeah, this one was, I had like a love-hate relationship with this song as I listened to the album. The first few times I listened to it, I'm like, man, I'm just not feeling this song at all. As I listened to it more and more, I was like, there's something about it that is good. But then at the same time, I'm like, it's still not. So I kind of went back and forth on this one a lot. You said, Vin, that there were elements of this song that reminded you of other songs, and there were even elements of this song, I think, that reminded me, like the phrasing of the words a little bit of some of Ozzy. Like I think I don't know from Ozzy, it reminded me like a little bit of the phrasing there. But just some reason, I feel like I'm supposed to like this song is the best way for me to sum it up. I feel like this is the song that they want you to say, hey, all right, that's a good Sabbath song, but it's just never connected with me for some reason. And I kept trying. In fact, there was a few times I wouldn't listen to the album front to back. I just put this song on and say, all right, you're gonna get it this time. And I'd listen. I say, still not. It's not a bad song, but I'm just not connecting with it. So I'm gonna go with a 5.1 on this one. Go ahead, Billy.
My listening to songs is typically in album context.
Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult for an album like this for me to pick out songs, but I did try to do that. And I found that when this song was in the album and I listened through to it, I liked it a lot more, almost like it was well sequenced to kind of make me like it then and not have it sound like the other songs that were right next to it. Uh, but I do like the song, and I think it's a little bit more. Even though we've heard a lot of keyboards in the album, most of the time the keyboards are kind of in a supportive
Agreed.
position behind. the guitar riffs, almost as if Tony Iommi wrote the guitar riffs and then laid the keyboards behind. Although for his solos, I know the Gerald Woodruff was the keyboard player. He was in the studio when Tony Iommi was recording the guitars to lay down chords behind so he could figure out solos over it. Um, where was I going with that? So I prefer listening to albums in as a full album, not pulling out songs.
Yeah.
And I like this song a lot more when it's in the context of the album than as a single song. Now, this is one that they did play in the tour after, one of only three songs. And so I think it might be a little, maybe they felt that it was a little more Sabbath style.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of consider it middle of the road, but I'll give it a 6.5.
Okay. It's interesting that they were doing this on tour because I said to myself, this is the song they want me to like. This is the song. But I wasn't connecting with it for some reason. But it's interesting that you're saying this is one of the three they were doing.
Oh, and let me also mention something that's
Yeah.
interesting that Vincent just said, that he said it sounded like a little like an ELO song. That's interesting because the manager at the time, Don Arden, was also managing ELO.
Interesting.
And they, in fact, thought he
I
wasn't
could have
getting,
just got lucky on that one.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Very funny. All righty. All right. Should we go to the next song then? All Moving Parts. Go ahead, Vin. I'm going to let you go first again on this.
Yeah, this has got a great groove, great bass line. I love the bass line on this. I love the melody. I think the choruses is cool. This is probably a song if and I gave this album a good 12 plus listens, you know. I think this song I might rate it higher, you know, with more even more listens in the future. But all that saying, I gave it a 6.3.
Okay, wow. All right.
Yeah.
It's funny. This is the one, the more I listened to it, the less I liked it. So I kind of went the opposite direction of you. It's another one. It's a straightforward rock song, but it just lacked a hook for me. I just, nothing about the song that I feel. So whereas Gypsy, the more I played it, the more I'm like, yeah, I think I like this. I think I do. And I think with more listens, I would like Gypsy even more. This one was going the opposite direction for me. I went with a 4.5 on this one.
Oof.
I was not
Criminal.
feeling, I was not feeling this song at all.
Criminal.
Sorry. So go ahead, Billy. Now tell me why I'm wrong.
Oh, this is well, this is always a song that I like. That over the years I find myself singing that chorus to myself, and I would say to somebody like a fellow Sabbath fan, hey, what do you think of All Moving Parts Stand Still? And they're like, that sucks. What are you talking about? Not even one of the better songs on the album. So it's just one of those songs that over the years, for some reason, I've always liked, and I've always associated it with the album art, which is the two robots sort of fighting each other as they're going down escalators, even though people made fun of it and said they were robots having sex
Right.
with each other. And the whole band, other than Geezer Butler, says that it was just a horrible design and technique. He loved it, and he just recently said in his book that he's the one who came up with the concept and hooked up with this art group Hypnosis to make the artwork. So I tend to think that All Moving Parts Kind of Stand Still brings out that art. So that's kind of why I like it. But I give it about a 6.5. Still, just based on that chorus is why I tend to like the song, but there's not a whole lot memorable really about the rest of the song. So I don't rank it as high as I have some of the other songs. So a 6.5.
Nice. All right. I'm in the minority of the three of us on this one, and I had a feeling I would be, right? So then that's okay. All righty. Rock and Roll Doctor is next, right? So to me, I listened to this song, and I've seen a review for the song years ago where somebody compared it's like a B-level Kiss song. So it's interesting kind of reading that because to me this is like a B-level Aerosmith song, maybe more than a Kiss song, but maybe it is Kiss like as well. I don't know. It's to me it's not a bad song. I think if the chorus was better, I would like the song even more. I think the part that bothers me is again, I don't feel like I'm listening to Sabbath with this song, but it's an okay song, but it just I wish the chorus was a little bit better. I'll go with a 5.5 on this one. Ben, what do you think?
This again, I'm going to disagree with you on the not sound like a Black Sabbath. I'm like, oh, they got Elton John on this song, cool. He didn't play on the song, but
No, I know.
that whole like piano part and on a Sabbath song, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. Like they merged doom and whatever you want to call the piano. I don't know. I think the chorus is good. I don't have a problem with the chorus. I think it's catchy, just like what was the other one you didn't think had? All moving parts. I think that's a catchy chorus too. But yeah, I gave this a slight under all moving parts, which I gave a 6.3. I'm giving this a 6.2.
Okay. I think Billy, before you go, I think what's interesting is if we rewind to the beginning of this, I said one of my first introductions to Sabbath was that Never Say Die tour video. And if I remember right, this song is on that video, but I swear I have zero recollection of this song from my childhood. So I wonder if whoever recorded the concert for me didn't like the song and cut it out because I had a copy of that. I didn't have the actual physical, I had a copy of it. Or did I even just skip it as a kid? I don't know, but I honestly have no recollection of this song whatsoever from my childhood, which is just a bizarre thing. But go ahead, Billy. What do you think of Rock and Roll Doctor?
Well, I'm going to have to dig out my VHS tape of that Never Say Die concert.
Okay,
I have the pre-recorded released
nice.
VHS tape, so I'm curious myself.
Let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain that's supposed to be on that video.
It's
But
I think it's readily available on YouTube. By the way, the whole
okay,
concert.
yeah,
Okay, that makes it easier. Yeah.
yes.
Um, and yes, people did say somebody did say that it was like a bad version of an imitation of a Kiss song. And the only reason I would think that they would say that is because Rock and Roll Over with Calling Dr. Love was out at the same time as Technical Ecstasy with Rock and Roll Doctor. So they
Okay.
probably, two Doctor songs about the same time.
Hmm.
That's probably when the comparison was made. Mike, this might be one where I would say the biggest problem with the song is that it's a Black Sabbath song because it shouldn't be a Black Sabbath song. It's like a
Right.
party rock song,
Yes.
like rock and Zeppelin's rock and roll, or it's just the progression in there is like an old style rock and roll, like a Chuck Berry
Hmm.
song.
Yes.
It's one that I kind of, when I went back and listened to this album, it was like, okay, I'm looking forward to this song, and because I knew the chorus, I could remember the chorus, and that it's got a cowbell in it,
Yeah.
so makes you happy.
I'm glad one of
And
us brought up the cowbell. Thank
yeah,
you.
but then it's a little bit too much chorus, and I kind of got sick of it very fast, and I started to think of again that I kind of listen to albums with a certain theme, and I almost create my own concept in a way, and I want things to sound the same. I want the production to be similar. So this one I actually brought my rating down to a 4.5 because I just kind of got sick of hearing it too much.
Interesting. Yeah.
And
It's
it was one that they did on the Technical Ecstasy tour.
right. I'm not surprised because, like I said, I
Yeah,
thought it was on that Never Say Die tour video. So I'm not surprised they did it on the album tour as well.
yeah.
Um, Interesting. Yeah. It's funny because, Vin, I've said this twice now, it doesn't sound like Sabbath. And I usually don't have a problem with that. And I'm not sure why I had a problem in some cases with this. Now, when I was listening to It's All Right, I was able to separate it and say it's a good song. This one just, yeah, I'm almost with you, Bill. I gave it a little higher rating than you did, but I was like, all right, enough. I've heard this. I'm good. Enough. It just like didn't connect with me enough. So, all right, we'll see what other people have to say about it. She's gone. Go ahead, Vin.
Well, first thing I recognize is not the whole notes version.
No.
Um, yeah,
Uh,
this song I think is brilliant. This without giving because there's only one more song left. This is I think is the best song on the album for me. Um, the strings, the way that the arrangement of the strings and the verses in the middle section is very Beatlesque to my ear, and I'm gonna gravitate to that. I actually stopped, and I don't normally do this. I said, oh, I want to read the lyrics to this. And I read the lyrics. It's a very sad lyric, very, again, atypical Sabbath lyric, which I thoroughly enjoy. And just very well. I just think the whole song is very well crafted from top to bottom, lyrics, production. again, very different from a Sabbath song, but I was really surprised on this one too, and I give it a 7.5.
Wow. Okay. It's funny because you know me, Vin, ballad boy. This is the type of song I usually gravitate towards, but didn't do much for me. I'll be honest. And I'm
Did you,
disappointed. I kept listening, saying, "No, that's the type of song you like. Listen again." Nah, still don't. Listen again. Nah, you still don't. Listen again. Nah, you still don't like it. Um, I could do
maybe you need
without
a rock
this.
and roll doctor to help you.
Maybe I need a, maybe that's what it is. If
Oh,
I
you had rock
never,
and roll pneumonia.
yeah, that's to me, if I never hear this song again, I'm okay with that. I hate to say it, but Billy went with a
I
four
hate
and
to
a
hear
half.
it.
Billy went with a 4.5 on Rock and Roll Doctor. I'm going to go with a 4.5 on She's Gone. This song is gone as far as I'm concerned. I don't need to hear this one again. So, Billy, who's right here, me or Vin?
You're right, Mike.
All right, I knew it. He's welcome back anytime.
I I listened to the song a couple of it's actually the one song I could not remember when I went and pulled the album back out doing research for this. I just could had no memory of what it is. And then I understood why, because to me there's nothing memorable in the song at all. It almost never goes to a chorus. Maybe I'm just kind of a whore for the hooks, that I gotta have something
I
like
love
that
it.
in there to make me grab onto it. But I listened to it a few times, and I even looked in the liner notes that it said they brought in this guy to arrange and conduct the strings named Mike Lewis. So I even looked him up to try to see what he did, but it's too common a name to try to track down the guy. But it sounds. What do you think, Vincent? Does it sound like a quartet, a string quartet?
Yeah,
Pretty much
yeah, I
that, no
was.
more than
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah, yeah.
But I could never really find anything in there that was memorable. I mean, it's great. Tony Iommi acoustic guitar. He's done that a number of times over the years on the different Sabbath albums, but just nothing in there was grabbing me at all. And about the only problem I had with giving it a rating is I didn't want to bring down my average for the whole album by putting it too low, but I went to a 4,
Nice.
which
Yeah.
is the
What do you
lowest.
mean nice?
Nice, because I said 4.5, and I'm like, no, I think I mean 4 for this one also. So I'm going to ask
Hmm.
you to lower mine to a 4 as well. So which is why I'm saying nice, because I'm 100% with Billy on this one.
It may even be too personal for a Black Sabbath album. I think that was Geezer Butler wrote that, and his wife was leaving him at the time.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I think that's what resonated with me too. As this is what you're saying. I just felt like, I listened to the vocal, and that's what, like I said, compelled me to read the lyrics. I'm just like, all right, listen, Ozzy. I mean, I think that's the one thing I don't know if any of us commented on. I think Ozzy again delivers the goods on this entire record, especially the range of the different type of songs. You know what I mean? He gave Ozzy on every song except for obviously the one that Bill Ward sang.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe it's kind of that string thing. Maybe it's that Beatles. It reminds me of the Beatles. You know how I feel about the Beatles. Not to
Mhm.
say that you guys don't like the Beatles, but maybe that's why I put in such high regard. It's not
Okay.
because I'm wrong or right or
You're
whatever you want to
entitled
say.
to you're entitled to your own opinion. How do you think this is a so far superior song than "Don't Close Your Eyes" by Kix?
Oh,
Will
buries
will
that song.
will blow my mind to my grave. But hey, you're entitled to your opinion.
I never liked that song either, Mike.
I know this
Thank you,
is
Billy. Thank you, Billy. Now I can thank Billy. Thank you, Billy. Talk
exactly.
about annoying chorus. God,
Oh,
gotta get me on started with that again.
oh man, it's hey, whatever. To each their own, right?
Mm,
That's what I love about music is there's never a right and wrong answer, and there's different opinions. And the song that I think and Billy think is a 4, and you think's a 7.5, or whatever you said.
mm,
I'm curious to see what the viewers and listeners think. Which side is right,
absolutely.
been you or me and Bill? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm really curious, but.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the last song, which is probably what most people would consider the quote unquote classic on the album, right? Dirty Woman. This is the second song that I actually knew ahead of time, no surprise from the album. I mentioned, I think at the top of this, I saw Sabbath in 2013, I think it was on the 13 tour. This was one of only the 15 songs they did that night. So this is a song I've certainly been familiar with. I love Tony Iommi's solo on this song. It's another one I think is just great. But it's another one that just for whatever reason, I'll say this, Billy. I know you'll appreciate this. Dirty Woman is to me for Black Sabbath what Cold Gin is to Kiss. It's a classic, it's a good song, and it's boring to me. I don't know why. I was so disappointed when I saw Sabbath in 2013 with the incredible catalog of songs they have that they only did 15 songs and this was one of the 15. It's just for whatever reason, I just always found it boring. I'm gonna go probably the same rating I did for Cold Gin. I'm gonna go with a 5 on this one. Go ahead, Vin.
Yeah. So first of all, there's a couple of things. It's almost like a break in the law. There's a da 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 da. There's like
Mhm.
this little breaking the law little thing. I'm like, wait a second, hold on a second. Which that song followed this song. I don't know if you guys know the part I'm talking about.
I
There's
Yeah.
a
think
little
yeah,
riff in
yeah.
there,
Mhm, mhm.
and then the end, and then there's a part, the melody at the end. I'm looking at my note. Reminds me of the middle section of I don't know. Da 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 da
Mm.
da da da
Maybe
da.
this is the one that
The,
reminded me. I don't know. Yeah,
da,
it's
da,
in the,
da,
yeah.
da, da, da. He does that. He
Yes.
starts the melody almost like that. I'm like, wait a second. Remember I told you there's parts of this record where I'm like, wait.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I kind of I thought that was interesting. That being said, yeah, I think this song's just a little bit above average. I gave it a 5.5.
Okay. All right, Billy, put us in our place. Stick up for
You gave
the
it a 5,
classic.
right?
Yeah, I gave it a 5. I'm curious,
Yeah.
Billy, are you going to stick up for the Sabbath classic here?
I didn't even know this was Sabbath classic, by the way.
I consider it a Sabbath classic
Yeah,
because
I didn't
it's
know that.
the one I knew from the
And I
album.
saw them on that 13. That was the only time I've ever seen Black Sabbath, by the
Okay.
way.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's my favorite song on the album, so it's going to have a high rating.
Okay.
Interesting.
The viewers are
Yeah.
like, finally, one person is right and sees the light here.
Now,
Go
Vincent,
ahead.
what you say about sounding like you said, I don't know.
Yeah.
The way they wrote songs is that uh, the instrumental band in the rehearsal studio would play the songs. Ozzy would just kind of scat vocal over and
Mm-hmm.
do like the da 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 da, just like that. He would do that,
Mm-hmm.
but not particularly any words that were going to be kept. So he did create the vocal melodies the way they were
Mm-hmm.
sung, which
Mm-hmm.
we could say that that's something that he carried over to his solo career. And then
Absolutely.
Geezer Butler would come in and he would replace what he heard Ozzy doing with actual words that rhyme and a theme. Um, so yeah, I really like the song. It's my favorite song on the album. I think it has pretty much that part you just mentioned and the beginning with the verse chorus that almost gives it like a two songs in one that I find is really interesting and the thing that Sabbath has always done to not make a song boring because they change parts, the different tempos and things like that. Um, Speaking to you, Mike, one thing that could make you bored with the song is I do think that the outro of the song has way too much solo in the end. Even though
Yes.
I love listening to Tony Iommi soloing, I believe that that was a song that the running time wasn't enough, being only 8 songs,
Yep.
and he probably said, let me just jam out on the end of this to extend out the time
Yeah.
to make it last so that's the only thing that I would say is a detriment to the song
No,
that
Billy, you're
that I
spot
think
on because there was a few times I listened to the album front to back, and when it got to that solo, I'm like, okay, enough. I've heard the song good,
yeah
and I just
it,
stopped the album with like 2 minutes left or something like that.
it's 7 minutes 15 seconds
Yeah.
long, and I think it could have been a 4 minute song, 4.5, and could have even been a single. I think it's strong enough to even be a single, but you got to give them credit for finishing off an album. Most bands that finish off an album with a very strong song, they usually have confidence in the album that people are going to get
Yes.
that far. So that's a positive to it. So I give it my highest rating for a song, which is going to be 7.9.
Nice. Very nice. And I'm going to guess that most people watching and listening are going to say Billy's 100% right on that one. It's just
Hmm.
so. All right, Vin, where do we stand? Drum roll.
All right. With the third highest rating, Mike Brunn with a 5.763. Just call it a 5.8.
Yep.
With the second highest and first, however you want to look at it, because it's basically the same, because a 6.375 is the same as a 6.39. You just average it up. It's a 6.4 rating.
Mhm.
Billy and I basically had the same rating for the album.
Wow.
His was slightly higher if you want to go technical,
Right.
6.375 and 6.39 for Billy.
Now, I think that's a fair assessment of what I came up with because if you say that five is an average album, seven is upper tier, I wouldn't put it in upper tier.
Right.
I would give it just above an average album just because of its inventiveness. So
Mhm.
I'm satisfied with the way it ended out.
Yeah. Yeah, me
And
too, because I felt the album started so strong. Those first three songs, I'm like, what the hell? Why don't people love this album? This album's great. And then it started to go downhill a little bit at a time for me there. But those first three songs, and Billy, like I said to you, You Won't Change Me, that's worth the price of admission alone. I just thought that was a great song. So even though I think the album is very average and very near average, those first three songs I think are phenomenal.
well,
And I'm thankful to even just have
I,
those three songs.
yeah, I mean, when I first listened to the record, I'm like, oh boy, I'm in trouble with this record. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to like this record at all. Truth be told, I was like, and I know Billy had said, I think maybe in a text or privately, I don't remember, you kind of have to give the record a chance and a listen, and it was true. It's like I would say to anybody who listens to this, don't listen to it once and
Right.
get your opinion. We told you what we liked or what we didn't like and some of the particulars about the song. But what I always like to do, Mike, at the end of the podcast, I always say, okay, how does for me personally, how does this rate against and what do I rate it higher? And just
Yeah, I'm
some
going to pause
albums
you
I
though before you do
okay,
that, right?
okay,
Because you made a very, I think, important point there that I want to elaborate on.
yeah.
One listen will, especially when you have a preconceived notion of what Sabbath is,
Mm-hmm.
one listen will never be fair and justified for this album. Because I'll be honest, the first time I listened to this album, I said, what the hell did Billy do to us? Oh my God, this is what the hell? And then the more I listened to it, I was like, no, this is a good song. All right, open your mind though. This is a good song. This is a really good song. Holy, this song is really good. So I think it's very important what you just said, Vin. Yeah, for people who maybe like you and I who don't know this album front to back, give it more than one listen. Let it marinate, as we like to say. And
Mm-hmm.
you might find that some of the songs pleasantly surprise you after a few more listens compared to your first impression. I told you the first time I heard this all right 10 years ago, I'm like, the hell is that crap? That's not Sabbath. And I kind of just shut it off. And it was when listening to the album over and over again, I'm like, that's a damn good song. I don't care if it doesn't sound like Sabbath. It's still a damn good song. So I just wanted to drill that point home that you made because I think it's very important.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was my mission in this podcast was to hope that maybe people would give it a chance because it never got a chance. And as we get further on in years, and let's say if Ozzy is never gonna really perform again or record or anything like that, maybe now's the time that we'll say, you know what? We want something new. Let's go back and look at something that we really didn't give a chance before or never heard. And let's say if, you can almost imagine what if it came out now and you
Right.
didn't know that it came out in 1976. How would you feel? You'd be like, wow, this
Mm-hmm.
is great.
Right.
Now,
Yep.
look, we,
Yep.
we have something else that we didn't have before.
Yep.
Maybe
Absolutely.
people can think of it like that. So I hope some of the listeners, watchers of the podcast here maybe go and give that album a chance.
Which is why I'm so glad, Billy, that you chose this album because look, we could have done Paranoid and it would have been a love fest. We could have done the debut, it would have been a love fest. And that to me is boring, right? And this is an opportunity to introduce the viewers and myself and Vincent in this case to songs and music that we maybe weren't as familiar with. And Vinny would keep asking me, yeah, how do you feel about, whether it's this album or some of the other ones we've done? And I'm like, I'm loving this because I know Sabbath. I've got, whatever, 10, 15 Sabbath albums in my collection. Like I said, I had basically every single original era Sabbath album, except for this one. And I'm like, wow, you chose, you must have known, you must have peeked in my closet that this is the only one I didn't have. So it's great to me to do something like this and be introduced to music that's almost 50 years old, but it's new to me, most of it, right? So I encourage the viewers and the listeners to do the same thing and go in with an open mind and don't only do one listen. So
Right.
go ahead,
Another
Ben.
thing
Go ahead, Bill.
Another thing you can do to reappreciate an album is resequence it yourself. Let's say if you heard it years ago and you said, okay, I pretty much know these few songs, but not these, resequence it somehow stack it with all the ones that you know you like first, and then see how, because you're easing yourself back in familiarly,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden these other songs come up. You might just appreciate those more. Resequencing can make a big difference.
That is very true. And I'm sure Billy and I will not object when people do that if they just accidentally leave off "She's Gone." It'll be okay.
Right.
So, go ahead, Vin. I cut you off before. You were going to say something about this compared
Oh,
to.
yeah. So, again, this is album's fresh. A lot of these records I'm going to mention, I've listened for, 20, 30, 40 years. But I did rate this record higher than Kiss Asylum. I did rate this record higher than Cinderella Night Songs. This is based on the ones we've done recently.
Right. Mhm.
I rated it higher than Lick It Up.
Wow.
um, the Alice Cooper from the Inside. Ace Frehley. No, that's about even. I won't say that one. Definitely Blow My Fuse.
Definitely blow my
Yeah,
fuse.
The Elder. Um, just to give you a kind of a sense, which
Mhm.
surprises me for a record I never heard.
Right.
And it just goes to show you, like I always say, I hate to say, a couple of Gene Shitburgers always kind of ruins a Kiss record when he has a couple of those horrible, in my opinion, Kiss songs. It just brings the average down. I think that's why for me, Lick It Up suffered. I think, and I think maybe, I don't know, Creatures of the Night. Maybe for you, I don't remember. There was one
Mhm.
record I think we both felt the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that makes me happy. The bottom line is why I say that. It makes me happy. Here's a record I'd never heard, not purposely. I never said. I mean, if we look around my house, I have 2,800, records, vinyl, and now if I find this record in the stores, I'm going to grab it, it's like, and
Mhm.
I probably passed this record, a zillion times when I was going through the bins, never thought to look for it because I never heard anybody honestly talk about it. So
Right.
the fact that Billy brought this to our attention, kind of like Mario did with the Alice Cooper record, which I was pleasantly surprised too. It if that is what this podcast brings to me personally, that's great.
Agreed. I know. Look, I 100% agree, and I'm kind of curious where we're going to go from here, Vin, with whether it's special guests, whether it's me choosing for you, you choosing for me. What else could we introduce ourselves to as we go into 2025? Of course, to me, that's exciting. That's part of what's exciting about music. And it doesn't mean that we're going to love every song, but I said it before, I'll say it again. This is what I'll close on. Billy, I'm so glad that you chose this album. This has been good for me. And I love when I can listen to something new and I'm instantly like, well, that song I'm adding to my playlist. Like I'll go running and I need like a 2 hour playlist. And I only want songs that I love when I'm running
Mm,
because I'm tired, I'm cranky, right? And when
mm.
I get a song like You Won't Change Me, and I'm like, all right, that's going onto the playlist, then I know I got a winner. So I'm happy for that. Any other closing remarks, Billy, that you want to make before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm just glad that you guys liked it. I'm really surprised.
Yes,
I
yes.
didn't because I didn't know how big a Sabbath fans. I know you talk a lot on the podcast about Ozzy
Mhm.
solo, but I never really heard you talk about Sabbath, so I wasn't sure if, it was something. But that might have been a good thing. Even if you were not Sabbath fans at all,
Mhm.
that would have been even more interesting that you listened to something
Mm.
like this.
Right. No, no. I mean, even like for my son, one of the first albums or CDs that he was aware of was that Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll CD. I mean, I know it's the greatest hits of Sabbath, but I mean, what a freaking catalog of music. And I said
Mm.
before I saw Sabbath in 2013, and part of it was a driving force of my son, just me constantly playing those songs and him being like, well, I want to go see Sabbath. I want to go see Ozzy, right? He kind of didn't know the difference at that age at that time yet. But no, I mean, I grew up with these songs and Sabbath, but not this album. So that's what's great. We
Mm.
do have to comment on the shirt there, Billy, before we wrap up, right? Because
Oh,
Vinny and I always joke about bloody, right? We're each other's friends and we're not buddies, we're bloodies. And I absolutely love the bloody Sabbath
It's
shirt.
great. It's great.
That's you would tell us before we started recording that's a cover band or a tribute
yeah, it's
Sabbath band.
a Black Sabbath cover band that's on Long Island. It's been playing about 10 years, and they do Sabbath like you wouldn't believe. You close your eyes and you think it's really Sabbath. The singer is amazing, hits all the super high notes like in Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Hole in the Sky and stuff like that. And they're
Now we're talking incredible songs. Now we're talking 10 out of 10 type songs there.
yeah. I mean, these guys do the real deep tracks from the first six albums. I think they do Dirty Women too sometimes.
Okay. Mhm.
But yeah, so they're playing all the time, and I don't know if this will podcast will go out before this coming Thanksgiving weekend, but the
It will.
Saturday night they're doing a Sabbathon
Mm.
fest where they're playing 65 Sabbath songs with musicians from all over Long Island jamming in coming in and playing on the different songs. And I'm doing 3 songs with them playing
Nice.
guitar. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's Saturday, uh, the 28th at a place called Whiskey Rocks in Babylon.
That is cool. And we did not plan that when we said we were going to record this and the timing of recording this. So that works out pretty nicely, actually. And
Yeah.
I'll say this, I'll add one more thing. One of the Kiss cruises I was on, I saw one of my all-time favorite cover bands, and that was a band called Black Sabbath. And it was 4 women, and they were phenomenal. And they did, all the classic era Ozzy songs, like he was just saying, and knocked it out of the park. I mean, they performed 3 times on the cruise, and the first time I was like, I'll go check it out just to have something to do. And I wouldn't miss them the next 2 times because they were just that good. So, yeah, really cool. All righty. Well, I think that's a wrap for this one. I appreciate the time. I'm really curious to see what people have to say about this record. We know it's this one that maybe divides the fan base a little bit. But if you don't know the album, like Billy said, I think it's a good opportunity to kind of go back and check it out, be open-minded about it. And we look forward to seeing your comments and your feedback. As always, there's no right or wrong answers. We look forward to what you have to say. Tell Vinny that he's wrong about She's Gone, and you get a bonus point from Billy and I. All righty. On that note, should we end Vin with the Ozzy clap?
Yes,
Billy's not going to have a clue
absolutely.
what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
The Ozzy clap goes like this for everybody who wants to play along. There you have it. Billy, thanks always for joining. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Everybody out there, have a good Thanksgiving if you celebrate, and we'll talk to you soon. Later, everybody.
Later.
This one goes out to Billy. Alrighty, there you have it. Our thoughts and our comments on the Black Sabbath album, Technical Ecstasy. What do you all think? Was this a misstep by the band, or is this album a lost classic? We look forward to reading and seeing all of your opinions. As always, all opinions are welcome, and there's no right or wrong answers. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.